Welcome to What If We Can Change It All, the podcast.
A podcast created by Movement.medicine.
My name is Shadisa.
And my name is Janina.
We believe that we have the power and therefore we can change it all.
This podcast is all about reclaiming your power. Welcome everyone to a new episode. We are the two of us today, and we were actually wondering of what we wanted to talk about today, and it actually came very easily. We wanted to tap into like how the same experience can have different outcomes for different people, right? And how people deal with it also like differently. And I think we had a situation just like that. So around 15 years ago, we were in a plane accident. And for me, it was a whole different experience and a whole different aftermath than it was for my sister, right? And we just wanted to share this story more because it is a really good example how we all work differently in the exact same situation. And like she was like one row in front of me, and it's like a whole different like perspective, right? So it is very interesting how our body also process things differently and how our mind takes over.
Yeah. Shall I tap into the situation?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we were on a family holiday 15 years ago to Bali, and when we came back, something happened in the plane ride. So how I remembered it, I was sitting next to my dad and my sister was sitting next to my mom. And at a certain point, there was like, and I think we both experienced this though, it was like it was clear something was happening, right? We saw like stress on the flight attendants, on the people helping us. And so that became more and more and more. And we saw that even though we were children, we saw that there was a lot of something was wrong. This was like really clear, and you could truly see it on their faces, right? There was like stress, there was like
people were walking faster.
Yeah, and like it was like super clear, but no one knew what was going on. And then at some point they shared it in the plane, and so there was like a little fire or a big fire, I don't know, actually they didn't share that.
No.
There was a fire in the plane underneath us, actually, where there was like
luggage.
Where the luggage was, there was like a fire. We didn't know how big, but we did smell it. And so it was pretty dangerous because we just took off, meaning that the plane was full with kerosene.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you. And so it was pretty traumatic, as we were supposed to fly back from, I think it was Denpasar, as we already did the first part of the flight, to Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And so instead of going back, we made like a little detour and we started flying above Malaysia. And what we just saw when we just heard the news, what we saw was just jungle, right? The only thing we saw was jungle. So the panic also under us, all the people in the plane, became bigger, because what if we had to take like what if we crashed there? Like there was very clear from what we could see that there was nothing there. And so after like circling around for like quite long, we had a emergency stop at Malaysia airport, as I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, Malaysia,
sorry. And so when we were there, it became even more and more panicky in the plane. So the flight people were, I don't know if this is the right word, but the flight people were very stressed. And so we had to leave the plane, I think, row by row. And then we were put it in like a gate, and we couldn't leave the gate as well.
I'm just laughing because you missed like a whole part of the story.
No, not for me.
Like this is so interesting. That is like two different experiences. But I am like, I never liked flying. That's a fact. Even as a little kid, I never liked flying. So I am always very aware about everything that's happening in the plane. But like the interesting thing is that because we couldn't land because we had too much gas, it was dangerous for us to land earlier because otherwise the plane would explode, right? So what we did is we circled around, but they also needed to get rid of a lot of what's the word that you used?
Kerosene.
Kerosene. So what we did is that we did the plane just dropped and did a dump of kerosene, and it dropped again. And we did that for a really long time. And then in the end, we could land on Malaysia airports. But the first thing that you can see was just like sirens everywhere, because there was like police, there was like fire people, there was like ambulances, because they still were afraid that the plane was actually going to explode and caught fire. So then we needed to leave row by row. And now you can continue.
Now she's telling us I do remember, but it's not that clear in my head. And so we had to leave row by row, and then after a while we were actually we were just locked in a gate. We couldn't leave the gate. So you have to imagine that the whole plane, which was a big plane, was just put in a gate and we couldn't leave there. It was in the middle of the night. And we were all hungry. We couldn't leave to go to the toilet. So I think there were, as I remember, there were like four or six passes to leave. The gate to go to the toilet, but you have to remember that it's a whole plane. Everyone is like high on the stress levels, high in panic, and trying to like, I don't know, navigate themselves. So it was like also not so nice in the gate altogether. And then we could go back in the plane, grabbing our belongings. So I actually did that with my dad, my mom and my sister, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my mom and my sister stayed in the gate, and we grabbed all of our stuff. And then actually it became, I don't know, it became just very stressful. And there were like food stamps, but actually everything was closed. So we couldn't really like get food for like a long time. I think in the end we could get some McDonald's, or there was something with McDonald's, but then it wasn't possible. It was like just a lot of chaos in my head, how I remember it.
So what we also forgot to mention is that at a certain point we could also see like, I could see, I don't know if you also saw it, but like the cabin crew, like we also saw like people crying from there because the stress level was so high at that point. And then indeed we were just, it really felt caged, right? Because you need to imagine that there is already so much panic, and then you're also locked into like a gate and you can't leave, and they're like, people are crying, people are vomiting. It was a lot. Just if you just walk into the room, you can just like be nauseous right away because of there were so many emotions there. And then at a certain point, because the whole airport was closed, they had like a big table set up with different packages from Burger King. But you need to imagine that it was like, I think it was like 5 or 6 in the morning. So we didn't have breakfast. So our breakfast should be like Burger King. But what I really realized then is that how selfish people can actually be. So there was like enough, almost enough for everyone. But you could just see that people were running to the tables and like grabbing multiple packages, and that there were also people with no food at all. You could just see like how our stress responses actually are when we feel threat for our life, right? And you could just see how people are actually just doing everything to survive, doesn't matter at what cost, although we were safe then, right? But you could see like couple hours after, because we had to sit there for hours and hours and hours to wait on another plane, how that stress was still so alive in the body.
Yeah, I think also to like help you understand, this was in a time where we had cell phones, but they were not as taggy as they are now, right? So I think we didn't have WhatsApp and stuff like that. So like having contact with the
it's weird to imagine.
Yeah, having contact with the outside world was not possible, as they were like also giving away like cell phone cards to call with like family, which was not really needed for us as we were together as a family, right? But there were also people flying alone, of course. So there was an option to get also one of those, so to like inform someone that you are still alive and still okay, just to like have in mind how it was then. And it's not like this, okay, I can just text the people or like call them on FaceTime or via WhatsApp. That was all not possible. So therefore it was even more stressful, I think. Not so much for us, I think.
No.
But for other people, it was because the plane got cancelled, right? So we had to wait there for hours. And then at some point, it was clear that there was not a plane. Actually, at some point of the hours, they also opened our gate. So we were able to walk around a bit, which kind of cleared the air also in the space a bit, actually. And then at some point we had to just go and hop on another plane and fly back home, which was still like a lot of hours. And I believe it was with the same cabin crew as we came with.
Yeah, because we had to wait for another plane because there was no plane available. And then there was also no cabin crew available because it was not planned at all, of course. So it was quite a lot, to be honest. I did not want to step into that plane at all. I remember that at a certain point, I was shaking, like, but even before we walked to the plane, right? I remember that I was going to the bathroom with my mom and sister, like still inside the airport. And like the only thing I could hear was like different people vomiting, all their stress out, right? I don't know, I just shut down. So I didn't want to go on the plane. And so eventually we had to, because we had to get home. And I remember that it actually for me felt really nice. To do it straight away, because I think if we needed to wait longer, that there was a good possibility that I would not go. Although it was not possible because I was 11 years old, but like, I think it is good that I was still so high in my stress response, like so numb, because otherwise I think things would have been worse.
And what I do remember is that on the flight back home, she was vomiting a lot.
Yeah, well, we just took off and then it happened.
Yeah.
Which is it really sucked because I'm really bad at vomiting. So it's like it takes me really a lot of effort and it really hurts. So I was so ashamed as well, and I was just sweating, and I was so yeah, it was the worst for me.
Yeah, and so I think like the whole period after was so different for the both of us. So if you were 11, I was around 15, 16.
Maybe we need to go to the part that we land.
Okay.
Do you remember that?
No, you can go.
Oh. So then we landed back in Amsterdam, back in safe grounds. And you know that people always clap when they land, you know, but this time it was so different because it was such a relief for people to be back on the floor. But also, I remembered when we walked to Schiphol Airport. I wanted to say it in English, but it's just not possible. To the airport in Amsterdam. There were like people standing there when we came out of the plane. And I remember that they gave every passenger on the plane, they gave us like a box of chocolate to say
thank you.
Thank you for like
trusting
us, or whatever it was, or it was like an apology. And I remember that people were actually kind of mad because a lot of people also missed their transfers and stuff. But the interesting thing is that gesture of like giving the chocolate did more of a negative thing for the people than it did a positive thing, right? Because you're not waiting for chocolate when you just like went through that all, right? But it's also very interesting how then still that stress response is so active.
And then, can I go now? And then maybe let's talk about our different experiences and how it played out in our lives. So for me, I mean, it was still a traumatic experience, right? But as you can see how I told this and the information Janine has, it did have an impact, but not this big, I guess. And so I decided that if I wanted to fly again, which I wanted, I needed to go as soon as possible again on a plane. So I don't know when we went there and which period of the time, but I know the summer after I wanted to dance in Italy. So I went there actually, with a friend and decided to fly to Italy. And I mean, it was definitely more stressful. but it wasn't like a traumatic experience again. So it gave me stress, and my heart was pounding, definitely. But besides that, nothing was happening. And so after a few flights, like other areas and other things, I can truly say that I'm not afraid of flying now. I did a lot of long flights, long distances as well. And it's, I mean, I don't enjoy the taking off and the landing. I don't want to say that I ever enjoyed it, but it's a bit more, it gives a bit more tension now in my body than it did before. But besides that, nothing is really happening. I'm not extra afraid during turbulence when the plane, turbulence when the plane is like shaking, right, because of the air. So that didn't that much for me, or doesn't do that much for me right now. And I really enjoy still going on travels and stuff like that. So with that, I guess I don't really have a trauma on flying, or connected to what happened, right? And then with Janine, it's like totally different.
Yeah, so when we just got back, like everything triggered me. I remember the days after, I was just still like so scared, but also still didn't feel that good. And like whenever I just saw a plane fly, my heart would just pound, or I needed to cry, right? So I really remember that I was starting like high school, actually, the summer after. And I remember that at a certain point, like we were sitting in the class and there was like a movie playing, and it was just a plane, and like something went wrong in the plane, and I just got triggered right away, right? And the first trip my sister talked about is actually really funny, because I went with her to drop her off at the airport and I was just crying. I was not even going, I was staying home, but I was just crying on the airport, and my heart was pounding and my arms were shaking. So for me, it really did do a lot, to say it gently. I think it took me like, let's see, it took me 4 years to step on a plane again. And my mom literally just pushed me in the plane, because it was also not just the gate that is connected to the plane, but it was like a little stairs that you go up, and then you have to like really see yourself stepping in the plane. And I just couldn't. I was just standing on the stairs, and I really had to have like a moment to really make that step and to be on the plane. And that was a really short flight as well. It was just, I think, 2 hours or something. And then I stopped flying again. And then my next flight was actually all by myself to do an audition in the UK. So it was just an hour flight. And I was really, really, really scared. But I kind of developed some coping mechanisms for myself. So if you ever sit in a plane and you see a girl doing weird stuff, it is me. I just have one song. No, I have one playlist, and there are 2 songs in there. One is for Takeoff, because Takeoff I find the scariest. And I also use that one for Turbulence, because it has like, it's a really, I don't even like techno, but it's a really like dark techno with a really heavy boom. I can link it in the thingy if you're interested in the song. And then I have one song for the landing part. And in Takeoff, what I did is that I was sitting in my chair. My arms are together, like almost in like a prayer position. And then I really have like a lot of pressure on my hands, and then I push my elbows out to the side of the chair. And the whole flight, I had my bum squeezed up, my abs squeezed in, turned on, I don't know, whatever. Like my whole body is just tense, because in that way I couldn't feel any slight movement in the plane. So what I did was just harden my body that much so I couldn't feel the movements and the sounds and hear the sounds, right? And I remember that I landed for the audition, and just I had this like big ass bruises on my elbows, both of them, and like little holes in my hands as well for my nails because I was like clenching my fists so hard, and I had so many different muscle aches when I stepped up to the plane. But I was really proud of myself because I did do it right. So it really was a lot. And then I also I did EMDR therapy as well when we just landed, actually, so I was still 11. I first did talk therapy. I loved my therapist. And then I got a different one who was also great in her job, but I just didn't really connect with her because you really have to have a connection, right? So I just didn't connect with her, and I was doing EMDR with her. And then after like 4 sessions or 5 sessions, I said that I was healed. Which I obviously was not. But like everyone believed me, so it was great. I was healed. And then I remember that at a certain point I wanted to start flying again. So I went to the doctor, got a very high oxy, blah blah blah, something to take whenever I fly. So that calms me down. I did that one time when I went to Israel, because that was a 4-hour flight and like 2 hours was my max, without any medication. And I was there with a friend, and I'm so happy that she was with me and that I wasn't alone, because I lost everything because I was so high on the mats. I almost lost my passport. I still don't have my jacket because it's somewhere in the airport. Like, I lost literally everything. And she really had to take care of me, and I could still feel the panic. So it also wasn't really helping. I just was really high, fell asleep, lost everything, was panicky again. So that's really how it went. And I didn't want to do that because they were also I wasn't addictive, but they were really addictive. They really warned me for that. And it was just a lot of bullshit in my system as well. So it was a total different experience.
And still
Is
as we went to Ibiza
Ibiza.
Last April, and also the December. Well, we have been flying together sometime, and so last April, she's still like she's still doing the stuff, right? She's still like clenching it.
It's less. I have to say, it's less,
but
bad.
she's still coming out of the plane bruised.
Yeah.
Like her legs, her elbows, and her hands. So it's definitely still there. It's definitely something she can still look into the eye.
Definitely.
And there's still something that needs to change, right? Which is fine, because there's also a learning curve, and she also learned a lot, and it's definitely less than it was before. But I think I can say that I don't have any stress anymore connected to flying, and Janine still has. And so it shows how different an experience can be for two people being in the same, like exact same experience. I mean, we're just a row apart. So we heard the same, we saw the same. And I forgot a lot of the things, but then when she talks about it, I do remember them, right? And so it's very interesting, I think, how the brain works and how our stress responses work. And it shows a lot also how we act in daily life. And not that I'm never getting stressed, because that's not true, and I also have my traumas and whatever, right? But in that situation, I reacted totally different, and in another situation I can react as Janine, and Janine can be reacting different, right? So I think it's very interesting, and I think it's also maybe even important or fun or interesting to do, and to see where are your highly tense stress responses, and how can you like dismantle them a bit.
Yeah, and I think what is also interesting is that although we had the same upbringing, went on the same trip, like I already had that fear of flying even as a little child. Well, my sister didn't have it, my mom didn't have it, and my dad didn't have it, right? I would say my mom is a bit more anxious about flying, but not really. But she would be the closest one to be. Don't you think?
Yeah, but then at the same time, my dad also doesn't really like flying. He is
No.
always going to
Yeah,
sleep,
true.
so he doesn't need to.
Feel and notice everything. Yeah, that's true.
So I guess I was the most relaxed person.
Yeah.
But also my dad is flying and had to fly for his work pretty
lot.
fast
Yeah.
after. So I think we can say that he doesn't have like an extra trauma
Yeah, on
because
top
of
of
it.
it.
Yeah, on top of it. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And like one thing I forgot to mention is that before we like stepped on the plane is a moment that I really remembered. Because we had our like transfer, right? But I remember when we had to board on the plane that I, before everything happened, that I said to my mom, it doesn't feel good. I don't want to go. I don't want to take this plane. And she said, no, Jenny, it's fine. It's fine. Blah, blah, blah. I said, no, I really don't want to go. And I almost started crying before we actually took off. And then 15 minutes later, like the whole shit went down. And I was like,
You see?
you see, maybe you should just listen to me the next time. I felt it. So that's also like something how powerful our intuition actually is, because there was no gas, nothing then, because we were still on safe grounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share?
No, I think it is a process. And if you struggle with flying or like driving or what it is that you find that scary, just know that it is okay also to take as much time as you need to do everything, and that doing it your own way is also perfectly fine. Yeah, I would avoid the bruising, but like if it gets you to do the first step, then it's fine. I actually have to fly soon. I'm already a bit nervous about it, I have to say. Yeah, I think flying and me will just be fine, but I would never completely love it. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think it's really about staying and being gentle towards yourself and having compassion wherever you are in like the process, right? If you find something very scary, I mean, seek help. Maybe that is also something I want to suggest. And then also be gentle with the process as it is okay. I mean, we all have our things and we are all scared of things or have things that cause trauma or a trigger response or however you want to call it. And that's okay. And you can work with it and on it. And yeah, that's I guess.
Thank you so much for listening to us and to our stories actually. Yeah, if you have questions or are going through something similar, feel always free to reach out. Yeah, we love to connect to you. We love to talk to you. If you're looking for like a community with people that are like doing a lot of things, and like if you're interested in like working more with us, I would say join our membership. It is 44 euros a month. You get a like-minded community. You get the chance of hot seat coaching. You get Q&A sessions. You get master classes. You get embodiment, journal exercises. We do it all. So if that is something that speaks to you, we will put the link in the description as well. And we are very excited to see you, well, hear you, whatever it is next week.
Okay, thank you so much for listening, and we can't wait to record again.
Bye bye.
Ciao.